Okay, good. I was going to say good morning, but really it's good afternoon. But anyway, at any rate, it's good to be here. Nice to see you guys. It's kind of like me, like I told the other group, it's kind of like visiting home for a short period of time. I don't know, before I retired in 2017, 2018, the aquaculture program I was part of that. So it's good to be back home with you, and good to see that Miss Balkcom is doing a great job, and see you guys in class. We want to share with you a little bit today, Dr. Cline and I. Dr. Cline, you see below me, or in my picture below me, is the director of the Fisheries Learning Center, but he's also an aquaculture extension specialist, and he's my boss and my very good friend and my colleague and my partner in crime and a number of other things. I'm Stan Arington, and I'm formerly from Auburn High School, but retired, and now I'm the education coordinator for the Fisheries Learning Center. And we're located at EWCL Fisheries Research Station out on North College, and many of you have probably been by there and have seen the ponds and wondered about what's going on out there. So now we have a facility and a program to help the public understand that. I want to talk to you a little bit today about careers in aquaculture, and it can go into aquatic sciences and even marine sciences to some extent. In aquaculture, typically, to define that, typically is freshwater, and I don't think I mentioned this last time, but if you have saltwater aquaculture, it's called mariculture. So different animals, a little bit different processes, but basically the concerns are very, very similar in both. So I want to share with you a little bit, and I'm going to go kind of fast through this because I want to give Dr. Cline enough time to talk with you also, because he's got some great things that fill in, more details that fill in with what we're talking about here. So let me see if I can get this share to. And all right. Says I'm sharing this screen. All right. Okay. Are we good? Everybody see that? Okay. Excellent. So careers in aquaculture. That's where we want to kind of hit the highlights on this today, because a lot of times students, and particularly students in the high school programs, will always ask us, what are some things that I can do? Can I have a job? Can I make a career out of this? Can I get a job doing this? Other career tech directors used to ask me a lot of times, what jobs are there around Auburn and Opelika for your students? And really the honest answer is not many. To get out and make a career, there are some, but not many. When you think about careers in aquaculture, we think more of a regional or a statewide or a national and even an international scale. I've had former students who've worked, and Dr. Cline has many friends and colleagues and students who work in other countries, work all over the United States. I've got students scattered from California to Florida, literally doing things in the aquaculture industry. So let's take a little quick look at some things that are going on with the industry. Again, we ask people to define what is aquaculture, and most students will tell you, well, it's farming fish. We grow fish, but there's I hope you'll realize after this little talk that there's many more areas of aquaculture, careers in aquaculture that you could look at. This diagram kind of gives you an idea of the many more specific careers. This is certainly not all of them, but this is a general indication of those that spring off just from aquaculture. We can see things like there is commercial farming, even though many people don't necessarily want to get into that commercial farming. There are many other areas that you can get into: biotechnology, law enforcement, food safety, aquarium curators, educators, researchers, as you can see all around. And we have the professional here as the extension agent, and that's Dr. Cline, which that's what his specific job is, or his main title. And so he'll talk a little more to you about that. So let's go through these things a little bit. And people say, what can I do? And so these slides, we're going to see your typical education that you kind of need to get into these fields. in some of the duties that you would see in these fields. And what we'll know, if you'll notice as we go through this, you'll notice that under the duties, you'll see a lot of those that kind of overlap. So many skills that you bring to the table, and you start to develop those skills in a class like you're working in right now. And one of the first ones we'll look at is veterinarian medicine, or veterinarian science, or epidemiology. Typical education for that is a master's in biology. You usually get a doctorate in veterinary medicine, PhD in biology. And sometimes it's not just a general biology field, but might be some specific biology field. You might be a DVM who specializes in marine mammals, or you might be a doctor of veterinary medicine that specializes in certain types of fish, saltwater fish or freshwater fish, or even ornamental fish. One of the best programs in the country, and I think it still is rated the best. Last time I looked, it was, is North Carolina State University's veterinary medicine program. Actually has students who learn how to be veterinarian surgeons on fish. So we talk about fish. It's kind of unusual to think about fish having surgery, but they do, and it's necessary sometimes. And we'll talk a little more detail about that. But what Dr. Cline will add some things to that for us. So what kind of duties would you see as a veterinarian? Disease diagnostics and treatment of those diseases, pathogen research, assistant aquaculture producers with import and export regulations, biosecurity, and then issues about animal health certifications. Right now, in this time with the pandemic going on, these diagnosis of disease and pathogen research, having knowledge in that is extremely important. We do a lot with, we worry a lot now about organically certified, and so that would be part of that. Issues aquatic animal health certificates. Do you have, is your finfish or your shellfish organically produced, or are you is it what it says it is? So you're working with certifying the health and safety of food products that'll be put on the market to be consumed by us. Hatchery managers, we don't think, what's a hatchery manager do? Well, if you want to be in that, you're producing young fish. So where do all the fish that we aquaculture or that we restock in our lakes and rivers for recreational purposes, where did all those baby fish come from? There's not enough fish that are produced in the wild to supply that. There's obviously not enough fish in the ocean that we'll talk about in a little bit to provide for the need for food. So the idea of growing those in a captive situation is very important to the continuation and the growth of aquaculture in our industry, in our ag industry. So you need to have a minimum Bachelor of Science, usually in biology or specifically related aquatic biology, that type thing, or aquaculture, and a master's in biology. The duties, what duties would you see? Oh, and these ponds are all used as rearing ponds. A lot of times the hatchery facility will be inside. We have a hatchery facility at EW Shell that where our researchers grow out from egg to fingerling size in tilapia and catfish. Hatchery managers would manage those facilities that produce game fish for recreation and conservation stocking in lakes, Lake Martin, the Chattahoochee River, the Tallapoosa River, the Coosa River. All of our impoundments are usually stocked with game fish. The skills that you'd need to know about reproduction, larval rearing, disease management, pond management, stocking in public waters. And so as we start to read about these skills and look at these, I want you to also relate that to some of the things that you're doing in class, because while you might be working on a 10-gallon tank or a 20-gallon tank, or even in the case of over in your hatchery room or your grow out room, the 300 or 400 or 500-gallon tanks, I forget what's in there, 200-gallon or 300-gallon tanks. Even though you're working there on smaller systems, the things that you do, the attention you pay to feed, the attention you pay to observing fish actions and behavior, the water quality, the water chemistry tests that you do, the filtration systems that you take care of. These are all the same thing. These are all practical skills. You're just doing them on a smaller scale, but it's the same thing that somebody who's working in a large hatchery facility or working at the Tennessee Aquarium or the Georgia Aquarium or any of these other sites like that, that they would be doing exactly the same thing, using the same chemicals, using the same apparatus, and using the same procedures that you are using in class right now. So that makes those communication skills that can be used outside the classroom and looking for a job. Many high school students that not only come out of the Auburn program, Auburn High program, but come out of other high school programs that have learned those skills. It's beneficial to them to know that ahead of time when they start applying to schools, and then they start talking to professors and research programs. And it's always impressive to a lot of the professors to have students that have some knowledge of water chemistry and some knowledge of recirculating systems and some knowledge of animal biology before they come to class. Teacher, you can get into education. For Ms. Balkcom and myself, we're both certified teachers, and so we have teaching certificates that are active here in Alabama. Minimum there would be a Bachelor of Science in Education. Your duties there, in a job like that, and Ms. Balkcom can talk to you more about it. Lesson plans, teaching or sharing of information, a lot of hands-on science activities and field trips and those type things. And I think in a lab and classroom like you're in this type of program with aquaculture, it really lends itself to the hands-on science activities. You're hands-on every day. When you walk into the class, it's hands-on because you're observing, you're interacting with the animals, you're working on the systems and feeding and all that type of thing, all of those skills that you're learning from there. So aquaculture tends to do that. For myself, it was secondary education, teaching at the high school level. However, though, if you wanted to move up, then you can go to move a vertical climb there in the education profession to a college professor. Typical education there, you'd need to take an additional degree, PhD, and in the areas of aquaculture, biology, physiology, toxicology, immunology, areas like that. The difference between high school and college is that in college you'll be more specific in the area that you're teaching, where in the secondary education in the high school we're kind of general in the terms that we're trying to do and introduce you to many different topics within the field. But in this case here, you'd be more specific. You might be teaching courses that general aquaculture or fish nutrition, physiology, and you see the list there. You'd be doing research at some point in time that's required by most college professors in this area. And so topics over here on the right that you can see, larval culture, there's that reproduction and hatchery management type of skills. Nutrition, we do a lot of that out at EW Shell. A lot of our professors work on nutrition, which is very important in the field right now. Biotechnology, physiology, genetics, and yes, that genetics is just as important as genetics that we hear about. The geneticists that make all of the news and talk about the different things they've done with sheep and goats and etc. So college professor, if you wanted to move into the area of education. And this is the one that usually is the most popular when we start talking about aquaculture jobs and aquatic jobs. Most students, we've all been to a large aquarium. Most of us have or have seen shows on TV. And so we go to the Georgia Aquarium, we go to the Tennessee Aquarium or the Aquarium of the Americas or somewhere else. And, that's what I'd like to do. I want to take care of an aquarium. I want to be an aquarium curator. Minimum degrees in that, minimum education is a Bachelor of Science in Aquaculture or Marine Biology. And you usually have to have 3 to 5 years of professional experience in a related field or have started out in a ground up, introductory position there. You think, well, I'll never get a job at one of the big aquariums, but there are lots of other areas too. And I didn't mention this last time, but I've had former students who have gone to Birmingham to the McWane Science Center and worked as aquarist in their world of water, gotten much experience there, and then moved on to other areas and gone to something either to a research facility as they moved up in school, or went to other aquariums and did other jobs, because there are things, not, we think of the big aquariums, but places like McWayne, and then there's the Dolphin Island Sea Labs estuarium. They're always looking for good aquarists, and other research facilities over in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. There's some, I forget the name over there, but there's some research facilities there that require aquarists. Zebrafish in medical research are a huge endeavor right now, with lots of researchers and doctors and geneticists working in that area. They know all about the biological systems and how to use those, but they know very little about the recirculating systems and how to take care of, quite frankly, some very expensive fish. We don't think of zebrafish being very expensive, but many of these that are genetically marked for different gene and different phenotypes are very expensive fish, and they need someone to take care of that. So job duties there, aquarium management, animal health, biosecurity, which is an important thing, particularly in bioresearch, feeding, education, outreach, and many other things. These are just general job duties, but there are many of them that you would be involved in. Seafood and aquaculture marketing. We have a lot of people who go into this field, and they may never get in the water. They may never actually physically handle a fish. They may never get on a boat. But their job duties are extremely important in advancing and improving the aquaculture industry. Typical education here you see is the full range, just depending on where you want to be, at what level you would like to eventually be at. But a BS, MS, and a doctorate, and usually economics and marketing. While you do have to have some interest or some knowledge about the specific animals that you'd be working with, most of your expertise would come in the fields of developing promotional campaigns. What is it that the public would buy? What is it that would be, what do we want to promote as being healthy food? Marketing initiatives, grant procurement, being able to write effectively and accurately, and talk to grant providers to obtain or procure these grants to carry out a lot of the work that we do. Trade events, traveling to conferences and big shows where it's amazing to see the items that have been developed for the industry when you go to one of these trade shows. Dr. Cline's been involved with one of the largest groups of aquaculture professionals in the world, and that's the World Aquaculture Society and their United States chapter, the United States Aquaculture Society, USAS. And we've talked to Miss Balkcom, knows about membership into the USAS for high school students, and there is an opportunity for that. But the trade events allow you to converse with and connect with and work with and talk to industry professionals in almost every area. Understanding economic analysis and marketing research and customer surveys and consumer surveys. And you'll see in a minute the numbers. We're going to show you some numbers in a few minutes that you'll understand that being able to collect the data and analyze the data and then display that data or share that data with the people who need it, and educate people who don't necessarily see that. So a lot of job duties here in the seafood and aquaculture marketing industry. Another bit, many of you have seen the program Wicked Tuna. The transfer of ownership of those fish from the fisherman to the buyer, the wholesaler on the dock, and then from the wholesaler to worldwide to some other distributor or seller somewhere else in the world. The transfer and documentation of the ownership of that fish has to be moved from one to another, and it has to be legal. And so those things are all set up. I don't know if you realize the wicked tuna, when they catch those tunas within 24 hours, they're on a market floor in Japan. So they catch them off the New England coast, and in less than 24 hours, they're laying clean and frozen on a market floor in Japan. So being able to move those back and forth. A lot of our fish that we catch here in the United States, they're our wild caught, will be processed in another country. So we actually ship them out, they're processed, and then they come back. So that all of that has to do with that marketing end of the business. Research director, again, this is climbing the ladder, and you will not start out as an administrator. That's not an introduction position, but it is one that you would want to work up to. Master's degree in science or a PhD in aquaculture or marine sciences or aquatic sciences in some area. Many schools, you just have to check the schools because schools will offer you different degree areas. Duties there obviously are more managerial than they are actually getting and working, with the animals and getting in the water and going out in the mud. You've got administration, you've got project and budget development. You have startup, project startups, always starting new research projects for helping professors do that or helping researchers do that. Business plans, proposals, reports, mentoring graduate students and staff, and then there is some field work and lab work involved in that. But the majority of duties here are more of a management type duties. You'd be doing PR work. You'd go talk to groups. You would talk to politicians about procuring money or support for programs and that type of job. But this would be something that you would want to build up to. The aquaculture researcher, typical here is a master's, that's the minimum, or with a PhD. Again, from a research standpoint, you are more hands-on because this is more project design, more grant writing, again, budget management, data analysis, scientific publications. So you write. Dr. Cline that's one of the things that he has to do. And I know he's given me an opportunity to proofread a number of his publications, and so that's something required in his position. Teaching and training students. You get into these research areas, and here we are: genetics, disease and health management again, food nutrition again, reproduction, larval rearing. So all of these things kind of blend over from one to the other. We might mention here that as you're doing research, or as you're looking at these careers, in many areas, there's kind of a horizontal movement from one to the other. But once you get into one that you're interested in and one you like doing, then working on vertical movement there and moving up if you desire to do that. Examples of research, and we'll go back just a little bit, but go to the top right corner first, and culturing disease-resistant shrimp. That was a problem for a while, and now there's a better understanding of those diseases through the studies of that immunologists have done. Bacteriologists and virologists all have specialized in the diseases that we see in aquatic animals. If you go to a Red Lobster, why is this important? Because if you go to a Red Lobster or some restaurant that serves seafood, on the average, 9 out of those 12 shrimp that you order, 9 or 10 of them come from another country, and most of those would probably, or not probably, but most likely, have been raised in a farm. We do a little bit here, and sometimes there are wild-caught shrimp. There's just not as much wild-caught shrimp as people would like to make you believe there is. And you'll hear people talk about, I won't eat any farm-raised shrimp. I eat only wild-caught shrimp. Well, if they eat in a restaurant like that, they're usually eating farm-raised shrimp. So it's pervasive, and it's in our world now. Aquaculture is. Blue tangs, we see that they're producing blue tangs, but not just blue tangs, but many other different fish that we see on coral reefs and in freshwaters that are used in the aquarium trade. Not most of them, but virtually all of them are aquaculture now. They're grown in captivity and recirculating systems. They may be bigger than the ones you have in your room, but they're exactly the same type systems that work on the same processes. Improving production of oyster larvae, but we also improve production of many different kinds of fish and animals, and aquatic animals. So that's one of them. We have a very good friend who is called Dr. Oyster, Dr. Bill Walton, who is down on the coast and has been instrumental in developing the aquaculture and farming of oysters in the Gulf waters off the coast of Alabama. And those are oysters that are not made for the all-you-can-eat, seafood bar on Friday night. These are oysters that are designed as what they call a one-shot cup oyster. a clean shell raised off the bottom, taken care of and fed right. And they're usually sold in white tablecloth restaurants. And we have some restaurants around here that are actually that actually serve some of these farmed oysters from places like Murder Point, Monalui, and some other farms along the coast. There's a high school consortium or a high school collaborative going on right now down on Dauphin Island, where they have high school students who come from a couple of different high schools and actually manage and work an oyster farm. And they had their first harvest early this past December, and we bought oysters from them, and they were excellent. If you like oysters, that is a good, clean product. Developing glowfish in the dark. Dr. Cline will talk to you a little bit about this in a minute, but developing these different species of fish for the aquarium trade that are unique. One of them was the glowfish. Others that have come into that we see in the trade have specific color patterns or depth of color or body shapes. They call it a blood orange tang or a cichlid or a blood cichlid, which is that it usually grows to a relatively large, dark orange color and size, and it has a hump on its head. That is an aquaculture found nowhere but in a laboratory and produced as a hybrid. Doesn't occur in the wild, but that blood orange cichlid is one of those fish. So a lot of these are just examples of research that go on, and there are many others. Commercial farming. This is the one that students usually shy away from, and it's the one that usually students give as a reason why I don't want to go into this field, because I don't want to be a fish farmer and I don't want to raise catfish in a muddy pond. And that's kind of the first thought that most students and most people have about fish farming. But as you can see, to be a successful fish farmer, it takes a little bit more than being able to raise catfish in a muddy pond. Although that's part of it, but that's just a very, very small, very, very not very large part of the industry. Associates in Science, that's a 2-year degree. The Bachelor's of Science or Master's of Science in Aquaculture, or technical or some technical degree in that area, or even on-the-job training. So if you went to work for a farmer and you learned the trade from just hands-on daily job activities, that would be another way that you could move up in that industry. And so instead of a little muddy pond, we're talking about ponds with thousands and thousands of acres and tens of thousands of fish, pounds of fish in those, even hundreds of thousands of pounds of fish in those ponds. So duties, daily duties might be caring for fish, water quality management, population management, facility management, again, biosecurity and feeding, learning how to harvest properly and keep fish healthy while you're harvesting and moving them from one place to another. Health assessments on the fish, observation skills, business management skills, some marketing skills. And again, we see overlapping of these job duties with other areas that we previously talked about. So in farming, and as you can see in these pictures, we don't even use an example of a pond or a lake that would be used to raise fish in. Most of what you see here are technical things that are going on, and those are things that have to be done. So, I remember one, I didn't mention this earlier, but one older Dirty Jobs episode, if you guys remember Mike Rowe and doing Dirty Jobs on the Discovery Channel. He went out to a farm out in Arizona where they were raising white bass in that farm, and white bass get a bacterial disease called very similar to what we call strep throat, and so all those fish had to be inoculated, and they'd given them a shot. You couldn't put it in the food, you couldn't put it in the water. They would actually give them an injection, and so the fish would have to be caught up, and each individual fish have a shot of the vaccine to prevent that disease. So there's lots of different things to consider when you're looking at farming, because you are producing a food product, something that people eat. A little different here, you get into a state inspector's job and you start to learn a little more about how you help farmers and help people promote the growth of the aquaculture industry, and you do that through education and outreach. You learn how to inspect facilities to ensure there's compliance to best management practices in the industry, and there have been some of those BMPs developed in the industry. Make sure that the farm is is in line with those, that the water circulation is meets the requirements, that the fish health meets the requirements, that the food meets the requirement. We even have to do that, within our program right now with the Learning Center. We have a group that comes out once every 6 months and inspects our aquariums and our displays, and make sure that our animals are being cared for properly, and that we don't have any surprises in there. We have to list and list every animal that we're going to keep, and register every animal that we're going to keep in there. So the duties that you're doing right now, this is what you're doing. You're doing these things. You're inspecting your facilities. You inspect your equipment. We'll go back one slide real quick and look at what these skills are here. These duties: caring for fish, water quality management, population management. You don't want too many fish in one of your aquariums. Facility management. You feed, you harvest, you do remove fish from one place to another. You have biosecurity measures that you use to keep a disease, if it breaks out in one tank, from moving to another. Quarantining fish, new fish that come in, quarantining those fish is a biosecurity measure. So a lot of the skills that are required in the industry, you guys are practicing and learning those right now in the classroom. This one is close to our hearts, because the gentleman that you see here in this picture holding the green board talking to students, that's Dr. Cline himself. He is an extension agent. He's an aquaculture extension specialist. He has a PhD in aquaculture, and his job duties include a lot of these that you see listed here, plus many more. Current and future aquaculturists with all aspects of production. He even talks to now and presents to and helps professionals in the aquaculture industry, farmers who are working in different areas. Now they'll come to him, and he leads some education groups in that. Something as simple, something as complex as that, putting on a week-long workshop, or something as simple as what we did yesterday. He and I went up to a house, and to a gentleman who owned some property up the lake, wanted to get rid of a goldfish and koi pond, and we manually go up and drain the water, take the fish out, and start physically taking the system down and doing away with it for the homeowner. So a broad range of skills involved there. So knowing the facility designs, knowing marketing, knowing engineering designs of systems and how to put them together, and then how to take them apart as well. Disease identification and treatment, organism reproduction, marketing and sales, and he does a lot of that. In fact, Miss Balkcom and I have both been students of Dr. Cline's. I did, I guess about 20 years ago now, went to a teacher's workshop, and when I first started wanting to teach this at the high school, and that started a long relationship between us and between Auburn High and Dr. Cline and Auburn University Fisheries, and so it's been very productive. And I would, if I had to grade Dr. Cline on his abilities as an extension specialist, I'd give him an A+, because you wouldn't have anything around in your room right now if it hadn't been for the gentleman on the screen to help us do that. And I don't mean to embarrass him, but it's the absolute truth. So an extension agent, which this again is kind of education to get into it, and we'll shamelessly plug the student summer camp. We have fish camp for high school students that's coming up this summer. We hope we're going to be able to do that in person this year. He can give you the date on that. And we have Ms. Balkcom has participated in the Aquaponics 101 workshop for teachers. As I did many years ago, which I get to teach a little bit of that now. So that's something else that he organizes and puts on every year and teaches in. And we are this year, for the first time, going to collaborate with Dauphin Island Sea Lab and the Discovery Hall programs, the K-12 programs at Dauphin Island, and do a coastal fish camp down on the campus at Dauphin Island Sea Lab. So we'll talk about marine fish and marine environments down there, and actually be in the environments themselves, just like we do up here with the freshwater animals. So that you can look on the Auburn University. That'll be the last weekend in May, part of the first week of June. We'll be down there. And that's open to all high school students. So if you want to check that out on the Auburn Youth Program, Auburn University Youth Program website. So extension agent is another one of those career fields. Food safety inspector. And here, here we've seen degrees in aquaculture and biology, but now we have a degree in health and human services or something in that area. Ensure safe handling and processing of seafood and aquaculture products through inspections and training processors, how to handle things safely. DNA testing to verify labeling and selling of various aquatic products. If anybody in class is involved in the culinary arts program, you've talked about Serve Safe certification, and you learn about food handling, safely handling food and storing food and processing food. So this is something that's extreme. And I hope you never do. I never have, fortunately, knock on wood. But if you've ever been sick by eating a bad oyster or a bad piece of fish, it's not pleasant. And so being able to identify those things sure helps out a lot. If being inside and actually working with animals or being at a desk is not really what you want to do, then one of those things, career fields, is law enforcement. So you got fish and game or in agriculture. Typical degree required there, basic, is usually a Bachelor of Science, usually in biology. And then you would go and train specifically with whatever game and fish you'd be working with, the game wardens or the whatever law enforcement area you would be specifically interested in. Job duties there typically enforce fish and wildlife regulations and the laws that go along with harvesting and possession and sale and transportation. Again, public education, patrol, aquaculture, bodies of water for submerged land. You look at land leases. You look at people using the land legally and properly, using the water legally and properly. If you've ever been up to Lake Martin, you know that there are rules and regulations that are required for building boat docks and boat ramps. Seize illegal products. These folks are not out on the water and not out in the woods to try to catch you. What they're there to do is try to preserve the populations, follow the laws that we have, the harvest limits or the creel limits as we call them, the size limits, and to provide to help that we maintain populations of fish and wildlife that for all of us who like to fish and hunt can enjoy. We have to stock those lakes. When you stock Lake Martin, stock the rivers with fish so that we have those fish there to catch. There's not enough of that natural reproduction that goes on to allow for us to have enough for us to enjoy those. And again, you go back to the hatchery management. Those fish come from hatcheries, and so you have to have hatcheries with good managers and good people there to work on those. Now, if handling fish and working on the water, is not your thing, and you're more of a, you're more engineer oriented, then there's aquaculture engineers, BS, MS, and engineering. You have to have some experience in hydraulics and mechanicals or civil engineering to understand how to use these things. It's not one of the important things in aquaculture that we see from our perspective are the closed recirculating systems. That's like your big grout system you have in the room. In the room next to you there, as well as your smaller closed recirculating systems that you have in the tanks that are on the shelves that you have in your room, but also designing much larger systems that may do different things. And a couple of examples here. These are all closed systems where the water comes out of a stock tank that holds the fish, goes through a series of filtration units, and then is returned back to the tank. Aquaculture, aquaponics are all an important part of this, and being able to build these systems and put them together and make them work. If your filtration system doesn't work correctly, your fish die. Fish die, you lose money. If your mechanical systems fail, fish die. Harvest technologies. If you harvest the wrong way, you damage fish, you damage your product, and you can't sell it. Biotechnologies in these areas are extremely important too, in terms of hybridizing and crossbreeding and improving stocks, improving growth, improving quality of the food. So lots of different areas here, understanding how to, hydraulics, how water pressure works, how moving from one place to another. Water, if you put water in the end of a pipe going, say 20 gallons a minute, which is, not too fast, but if it's going 20 gallons a minute and you run it through a pipe and you go 100 yards with it, do you think that water's coming out the other end at 100 gallons a minute? It's not, because there's friction involved in that pipe. It's running against the surface on the inside. And for every bend that you put in there, an elbow or a turn that water makes, it slows the water down even more. So an understanding of how to make that water circulate at the rate that you need it to circulate at, how pumps work, all of those kind of things work really neat. We built I told the last class real quick an example. We had 5 10-gallon tanks that we had 10 10-gallon tanks, excuse me. There were 5 down each side of a table, and we built a manifold out of PVC pipe, and we were going to use a closed filtration system, and we took a 20-gallon barrel and we put a pump in the bottom of it, and that pump was connected to a pipe in all 10 of those tanks to pull water out of that tank. The idea was to bring the water out of the tank, bring it into a closed container, and use the pressure to push the water back up and put the water back into the tank. So we had this closed recirculating system after it went through the filtration. So we got it all set up. We had the water running, locked the lid down and put the lid down on it and locked it and closed it up. And it took about 15 minutes, but there was enough pressure built up inside that container, that 20-gallon container, that it blew the locked lid down off the top and sent a 2-foot diameter column of water about 4 or 5 feet in the air in the classroom. So you learn the hard way sometimes. And that's one of the neat things about this business, is that a lot of it is experimentation, experimental designs that you work with. So that's a very neat thing about this. So there are lots of different areas. So why is aquaculture important? Why are all these different career fields important? In this chart, you'll see that comparison of wild catch that we mostly out of the ocean, but wild catch that we catch or that we harvest compared to aquaculture, and we see that the blue is wild and the orange is aquaculture products. These are in million metric tons, and we see that right around 2020, in the last year or two, aquaculture production has caught up, equaled, and even started to exceed our wild caught production that's coming out of the oceans. We're not making new fish in the oceans, not enough to keep up with the demand of seafood. And you say, well, it's no big deal, I don't eat fish anyway. But somewhere in your life, every day, every one of you in this room are using some aquatic product in your life. It could be anything. You may not be eating fish, but you're using fish oil, or you're using, even in cosmetics and makeups, you're using fish products. You ladies that wear the glittery makeup, probably fish scales in there that's been processed and chopped up. Your toothpaste, you've got products from algae that's in your toothpaste, that's in your gelatins, in a lot of your food, your processed food. So while you may not be eating a fillet of fish or a shrimp or an oyster every day, you are using that in your product, in your life. If we look at the top 10 aquaculture producers in millions of tons around the world, and this is a number from 2017, and it hasn't changed much. We see there's one country that dominates, that produces more than 65 or 70% of the total aquaculture products. And we go back, I'm gonna bring you back to this one time right here. We're talking almost almost 100 million metric tons of aquaculture product produced by 2020, almost 100 million metric tons. Well, more than 60% of that is produced by one country. And where do we see the United States in here? We don't, because we are not one of the top aquaculture producing countries in the world. I will tell you this, though. We are the top aquaculture technology producing country in the world. And you have living right in your back door one of the top centers in the world, and that's Auburn University School of Fisheries, Aquaculture, and Aquatic Sciences. We have professors that have done research all over the world. We have professors and people who have taught all over the world. We have students from all over the world who come to Auburn just simply to learn how to grow fish and how to do it better. We have, I guess, and I'm proud to be a member of it. And I always wanted to be. And so when I started working at the university, I finally got to be a member. A little member, by the way, but still a member of the fish mafia. And the fish mafia the Auburn fish mafia is pervasive around the world. There's probably no country in the world that doesn't have or hasn't had or does have an Auburn student or professor who has worked or is working in that country. And there is virtually no facility, hatchery facility, management facility, research facility around the world. I don't think there's a one that doesn't have someone connected with Auburn University in that facility. So take advantage of that opportunity that you have. And a lot of places don't have that advantage. So where do we fall on here? Less than 1%, significantly less than 1% on this list of production. But if you add all of this up, I think Dr. Cline will mention to you in a minute the amount that is produced in other countries. So we go back to this and say, look, we've got aquaculture, and we talk about that and getting a job in aquaculture, but people tell you there's nothing around here. Well, you're right. There's nothing around here, like I said a while ago. But it's not about local. It's about statewide. It's about national, and it's about international and global. Because when it comes to aquaculture and seafood and finfish and shellfish, it's more than local. It's around the world. The catfish that we raise in Alabama and in Mississippi is consumed a lot in Alabama and Mississippi. Mississippi is the top producer. Alabama is number 2, but it's also shipped all across the country, and it's also shipped around the world to international markets around the world. So as are other products that are raised in other parts of the world are shipped to the U.S. Next to it used to be at one time. I think it's only behind steel now, but at one time, I know that the importation of seafood was one of the top 3 natural products that we imported into this country, and was the second leading contributor at one time a few years ago to our national trade deficit, was the importation of seafood. So it is significant. It is a significant industry, and I think it's worthy of you guys, if you're interested in any part of this, at least in exploring the opportunity to build a career in that. This is our contact information. I unintentionally didn't mean to, but I'm kind of glad I did. Left off Dr. Cline's email address. But please, if you have any questions or want to find out about anything, you can call us or send me an email, and I'll make sure that he gets it. But I will correct this slide before I use it again. But we're out at the Fisheries Learning Center. We're out on North College at the E.W. Shell Fisheries Research Station, and we hope that we can get you guys out there soon when we get everything back to some level of normalcy, and be able to show you what we got out there and take you around and let you see it in person. So with that, I'm going to close this screen, and we're going to stop sharing, and maybe we can get back here to where we were, and there we are. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cline, or if you got any immediate questions right now, we'll for me or Dr. Cline, we'll try to answer those right now.
Okay. They said they're good right now.
Okay. All right. Well, Dave, I'll turn it over to you then, and let you pick up and carry on. You're muted. Okay. You're muted.
Okay. Let me ask you guys, have any of you guys traveled outside of the United States? No? Yes?
We had one.
That's great. Just wanted to let you know that aquaculture and the seafood business is truly a global industry. Stan was talking about the seafood deficit, and I think in 2018 or 2019, that deficit was $17.8 billion, which is the second largest deficit in at least natural resources commodities. It's way behind oil, but it's still a big one. And I was trying to do it on my calculator, trying to figure out if you paid, it would take to how long it would take to pay back $17 billion. And if you paid $10 a second, it would take you 54 years to pay that back. So we're talking about a lot of money. And it is, these things are coming from all over the world. Stan mentioned the inspection. You know, about 90% of the seafood that we eat is imported. And a little bit scary factor is less than 2% of that is inspected. So there are certainly jobs available for fish inspectors, if that's anything you guys would like to do. But this is, it's a great opportunity to get engaged with people from other places and other countries. I think aquaculture has taken me to about 18 different countries, including South Africa, Korea, China, Nepal, and then a few others. But it's, I went to the Boston Seafood Show a couple of years ago, talking about the variety of products that you might see. There were fish that were stamped into like dinosaur shapes, you know, things like chicken nuggets you would see now. They had dinosaur shapes. They had carrageenans and augers on display, which are the things that go into makeup. I even saw some tilapia and cod skin shoes. So there are all kinds of ways to make money with these things. Here's my tilapia skin wallet. They're also using tilapia skin now to treat burn victims. So there's lots of different directions you can go. In terms of the students we have here at the university, we've trained students from over 100 different countries, and folks are coming from all over the world to study here, and it's kind of nice that it's right in your backyard. There is, Stan talked a little bit about the glowfish. That is the first transgenic organism that was produced for sale, at least animal-wise. And that is taking genes from things like jellyfish and some sea anemones and some corals that get put into those glowfish that make them glow. And believe it or not, the reason they created that glowfish was to be a pollution identifier. If the fish was in an environment that was polluted, it would glow. And that's how the glowfish came about. But you guys are extremely lucky. I know we're short on time, but if there's anything I can ever do to help you, you know, one of the questions that was asked by the last class was, how did we get involved in aquaculture? Well, I am not a native Southerner. I grew up in upstate New York. And when I went to college, I thought I might like to be a veterinarian. But when I got to college, number one, I didn't have the grades for it. But number two, I found out that there was a lot of different things out there. So take advantage of any opportunities you have, either to travel, visit any of these facilities, meet with people. You know, you've got a great opportunity there that a lot of kids don't have at the high school level. In fact, I was talking, well, I don't know if Stan mentioned in this talk, but we spoke with a high school student from California yesterday. But she was doing a survey and involved us, but she said they didn't have any aquariums in her school, and she was from a very wealthy community in California. So she was excited to hear about your program and the interesting things that you guys do. But when I got out of college, I didn't feel particularly prepared to do anything because I went to a liberal arts college, and then I got hooked up with some people. So I went on to graduate school and got hooked up with some people doing oyster culture in New Hampshire, and realized that these guys were selling those oysters for the half shell market at 50 cents a piece. And if you guys have studied oysters at all, or I was, it was a kind of blew my mind to learn that one oyster could produce 1,000,000 babies. So I started thinking, okay, 1,000,000 oysters, 50 cents a piece. That sounds like a pretty good business. And that's the way I got interested in aquaculture, was from a business perspective. And I thought I wanted to be a fish farmer. I knew I didn't want to be an oyster farmer because after spending a few days in the sleet out on a bay in New Hampshire, I decided to look for the best schools in the country for aquaculture, and it came down to the University of Washington and Auburn University. And having been at lived my whole life in the north, I decided to try somewhere warmer. Well, I got my master's, went on to a catfish farm in Missouri, and really had a great adventure managing the catfish farm. But it was, I found out that I was not cut out for the country life. I moved to a town of about 1,000 people. So there are a lot of things to consider when you're selecting your job. You need to think about, where you're going to be. Of course, you have to be able to make a living. But when I had the opportunity to move back to Auburn University, it was sort of like returning to the mothership. And if you can find something that you love to do, whether it's related to fish or not, you'll never work a day in your life, because it's fun to go to work, and that's what you're looking for. We'd love to see you in the fish world, but whatever you choose, I think you need to find something that you're really passionate about. So, anybody got any additional questions? I can fill you up with factoids, but I want to learn. Any of you thinking about going to Auburn University? Any of you interested in studying fish? All right. Well, that'd be great. We'd love to see y'all.
Yeah, we've got several of them interested in studying fish. We've got a couple interested in marine biology.
Yeah.
We're pretty excited about it.
Somebody with 4 arms.
Now, this is the group of students who got to fillet the other day and actually got to cook, and they did pretty good. I was very impressed. We've got some pretty expert filleters in here, but we also had some newbies to it, and they did their first fish, and they learned a lot after their first fish, and I will tell you that they greatly improved. Some of them were actually even bold enough to eat their fish after they cleaned them. We did that the next day. A couple of them donated their fish to someone else because they like to clean fish, but they don't particularly like to eat fish, which was also interesting, but that's okay. They still got up to the plate and did what they needed to do, so I was pretty thankful for that. And so we had some people who were experienced, and they showed us some new techniques of how they actually clean tilapia. So that was good. It was a really good lesson that day. It was great.
Did you happen to weigh what you started with and what you ended up with?
No, not this time, because it would have hurt some of them's feelings. Because some of those fish were huge. I showed you the picture of how big some of those were, because we've only been growing them for like 3 years, so yeah. They were huge. And so some of them got like practically steaks out of them, and some of them just got slithers out of them, because sometimes it was their first time, and it can be a little tricky. They learn, and they gave me some advice on some new knives that they would like.
Sharper ones, yeah. Those, there's in many locations around the world, fish are still processed by hand. And if you're looking for quality and getting the maximum amount of meat off the bone, that's a good way to do it. And you may see examples, pictures from processing plants with hundreds of people all in surgical gear working on fish. But if you're good at filleting tilapia, you can get 33 to 35% of the meat. In other words, if you started out with a 1-pound fish, you would end up with a third of that in fillets. So that's but that takes a lot of practice. If you were going to eat that whole and you didn't want to eat if you were willing to pick around the bones and you were just taking the guts and the head off, you could probably get 60%. But it takes a lot of practice. And we at the university, we're growing fish out here at the station and sending them to campus to be used in the campus food system. But we had to supply the fish cleaners because none of the chefs in the kitchen wanted to clean 100 pounds of tilapia. I don't know how many you cleaned, but it can take some muscle power and definitely some skill and some time to do that. So it would be a challenge to clean several 100 pounds in a few hours, which is what they're trying to accomplish. So,
well, I was really proud of them because some of them had never cleaned a fish, but some of them had cleaned a fish. Some of them had never cooked or eaten their own fish at home, and so they had the opportunity to cook and eat their own fish. We had like all different kinds of variety, even though that might be surprising because we have a tiny class. But I mean, I think we had every different combination possible. So it was really good, and I had 3 options here for them. I brought the George Foreman grill in for them. I brought the air fryer in for them, and then Stan had left us a little fryer, and so we got that out and put a little oil in there. And so they had 3 different ways to decide how to cook it. And I had a rice maker, and I thought, oh, let's just throw some rice in there. But I should have made grits and brought cheese. And they also told me next time I need to bring lettuce so they can have salad. So they're really, they would like to harvest some more fish, but we don't have any ready to eat. They got some catfish that they're looking at that they're thinking, hey, we might be able to eat them by May.
Okay. Well, if you're interested, how many of you guys currently eat catfish? Do you all eat catfish? Most of you?
Yeah, most of them. I got 2 non-fish eaters.
Well, you can look on the Catfish Institute has a website, and they have a list of several hundred recipes that you can actually find catfish to eat for every meal for the next year. So you can think about fish in terms of lots of people don't really know how to cook fish at home, and that's through no fault of their own because nobody's teaching them. Most of the fish we eat comes from restaurants, but you don't need to be afraid of it. Now that you've seen it and done it and know how to handle the fish, lots of different interesting ways to prepare it. So, I mean, you pretty much anything you can think of to do with chicken, you can do with catfish.
Well, we're hoping those last little few catfish are actually big enough because we practice cleaning tilapia, but we haven't practiced cleaning catfish, and that's a totally different process.
Yeah, well, catfish is easier except for getting the skin off. Yeah, that's the challenging part. And when I did work on that farm, the folks who owned the farm decided that we should be doing a weekly catfish harvest and distributing it to restaurants. So we actually grew the catfish, caught them, cleaned them. I went around to different restaurants and markets and tried to convince the chefs to use our catfish. We even did a show with the Wine and Grape Growers Association where they paired different wines to all these fish meals. But I had to do 800 pounds of catfish one day with 3 people, and that was a job. Let me tell you.
I'm sure it was.
I haven't filleted many fish since. I've forgotten how to do it.
One thing about a lot of people will say, I don't eat fish because I don't like the fishy taste. Realize that if your fish tastes fishy, it's not bad, but it's probably a little older and it's been frozen once or twice because the oils have now concentrated in the meat or in the tissue, and so you get that kind of oily, fishy taste to it. But fresh fish, good quality fresh fish, should taste exactly like the seasonings that you use to cook it. So if you want your fish to have an Italian flavor, you use Italian seasonings or Cajun or whatever. So fish, a good quality white fish should be kind of neutral in taste, and take on more of the flavor of the seasoning that you've got. So
Any of you guys have any questions about Auburn University fisheries or, oh, Rebecca, I did tell you that our students were interested in talking to your class, right?
You did.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And we'll talk more about that. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. One of the other marks of a good extension person is you don't have to know everything. You just have to know who to talk to. So if you guys are looking for any information on any particular fish or other aquatic critters for research projects or whatever else, we might be able to help guide you. I was looking at Stan's pictures in his presentation, and I don't know if it's a mark of being around a long time or traveling, but I recognized a lot of folks that were in his pictures. And some of those were pretty old pictures from a few of them.
Yeah.
So,
Did you mention your website, YouTube channel?
yeah, Rebecca, did you see what I put in the chat?
Yes, I've actually been using your website a couple of times.
Okay. Well, I put a little fact sheet in there about the genetically engineered salmon that I mentioned this morning. There is a salmon made by a company called Aqua Bounty. It's the first edible transgenic or genetically engineered fish on the market. And they do that by taking genes from a Chinook salmon and an ocean pout. And they are able to make that fish grow twice as fast as a regular salmon, which does a lot of things. Number one, it can potentially make more money for the farmer. Number two, it decreases the risk of growing those animals because they're in the water for a shorter period of time. And when you're thinking about salmon, you're not talking about a fish that grows in 6 to 9 months. You're talking about one that takes 2 to 3 years to grow. So those fish are quite valuable, and they want to get them in and out as quick as they can. So, but that's
I appreciate you putting that out there because in the new course of study, they have a whole section now on genetic engineering in fish. And so they want us to start addressing that. And so when we get through with this unit, we still have to, there's a big section on disease and genetics. It's got to come up.
Okay. Well, Stan mentioned that disease in the shrimp. One of the reasons shrimp got so expensive a few years ago was because of a disease that wiped out 80% of the crop in Southeast Asia. And there are diseases like that popping up all the time that can really wipe out entire areas and populations of critters. So staying in front of the diseases, we've got professors here that are working on vaccines. Just like they're working on vaccines for the pandemic stuff, we've got professors working on vaccines for fish against a couple of the big bacterial killers, including columnaris, which you may have heard of because it's very prevalent, as well as ESC, which is enteric septicemia of catfish. So, any other questions you can think of?
Dalton?
Are there any jobs to Auburn University fisheries for people that have the experience of what we do?
Okay. Dalton wants to know about job opportunities, if there might be any come this summer or into the next school year, and what they would need to do to apply, if there are.
Okay, you're talking about here at the station?
Yeah, or anywhere related to fish.
Well, I would, if you're interested in doing something out here at the station, they do pretty regularly hire summer labor. The thing to do would be to talk to Larry Lawson, who is the director of the station out here, and I would either just call and set up a time to visit with him, or come by, after school one day and see if you can catch him. But he's going to be the one making the decisions on who gets hired and what work is available. And in general, you would probably start out, doing relatively mundane things like doing the water chemistry or scrubbing tanks, but then you'll get a chance to help move the fish around and get more experience handling the fish. if you want, folks like the ADCNR, which is the game and fish folks, occasionally have internships and summer work, but I would just let it be known that you're interested, because we may have other professors that are looking for help on fish sampling and some of the things like that. But I would encourage y'all to take a look at the World Aquaculture Society has a website, and they have a job board, and you can kind of see the variety of jobs that are available, not only in the U.S. but around the world. And some of the, and believe me, there is variety. Everything from equipment manufacturers and feed representatives to, all the specific ologies that Stan mentioned. Anything else?
Anything else, you guys? I was writing it down.
When you're applying, just one thing, when you're applying for jobs like that and they ask you about experience, make sure you put down, what your classroom experience and what you've done in the classroom, the feeding, the caring, the different things that you learned during the class. So the skills that you're learning right now are skills that you can use later on. So don't discount what you're doing in class just simply because it's in a classroom and it doesn't count. It does. It counts a lot when you're trying to apply for a job.
Yeah. And we've had several students come through. We've got an intern from the high school now who I'm pretty sure went through several of Miss Balkcom's classes. And I think we're on our third one now that has become an Auburn student. Yeah, that from the high school that came through an internship opportunity and went on to become students here. So it's definitely having the experience you have, even if it's a basic understanding of water chemistry and potential things to look for problems with the fish. Those things are all beneficial.
Any other questions? All right, gentlemen. I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's getting close to the time for the bell. We sure do appreciate it, all your insight, all your information, and we'll take a look at some of these websites that you guys recommended. But thank you guys very much. A round of applause. Yeah, and we're looking forward to COVID-free days so that maybe we can get out there and actually get to the lab and get a great tour and things like that, and maybe get you guys into the classroom.
Okay. Well, and if that takes a while. I've got another presentation on aquaculture in the United States, if that would ever be helpful for you.
Okay.
So.
Excellent. That sounds great. All right, you guys. Thank y'all very much.
All right. Have a good day.
All right, you too.